Thank you. So, I'm here to talk about continuous integration and a bit about continuous deployment and how we're using it in an actual project at work. I work with a company called Shortcut, and we make apps. The app I'm going to talk about is used in 22 different countries, and it's translated into 24 different languages, and it has 2 product owners. The translation process is done using a tool called Poe Editor online, which is what you see is what you get editor, so it doesn't require a lot of text savviness or skills on that part, like coding, which allows the translation process to be decentralized. They can do it within their organization without us as app developers having to translate the .strings file and all of that. We tried doing that having the client translate into the actual .strings files for the iOS application, and lo and behold, it did not go well. You get spaces where it shouldn't be, and you get funny line endings and all that, and we spend more time fixing it than we do actually implementing the localized version. But what I'm talking about here is going for the continuous integration and how we've taken it to create value for our customer. Is that we're now, or by and large, we've stopped using product requirements such as this one. This is just an example, by the way. But we've stopped using these nitty-gritty, super detailed definitions of what we will include in this delivery, and it should work like that, and it will have those requirements, and this is the acceptance criteria and all of that. We've done away with all that for the most part. And the reason why we've done away with it is because it creates friction. It creates friction in the dialogue between me as a product manager and the developers, and it creates friction between me as a product manager and the client. Because they have one way of reading that document, and we have a different one. And when we talk about requirements as such, you get bogged down in the actual wording of this document instead of thinking about what will this be like for the user. Like the previous speaker was talking about, like travel expenses is a good example. So taking this to stop thinking about what the acceptance criteria and the product requirements and such, and see what will we do now to create value to the end user. How will this benefit the end user? How will this better their work day or things like that? Asking those questions doesn't necessarily fit into this format. And that is why we've gone from this and to this. So this is an actual screenshot of my Trello board for this client. We are working with this client in this Trello board every day. We have one column that is the issues that I've made, and then there's one column for the issues that the client themselves made. And they get to prioritize. They get to do and set the order of how we're going to do things. It's their money, so why shouldn't they be able to prioritize the way they want? We're just doing it on their behalf, or doing the coding on their behalf. And this allows us to easily see how or where we're at, what we're going to do next, what is their priority, and what's our top priority. Because we might have some issues that we want to fix, like technical debt and all that fun stuff, which the client doesn't necessarily see, at least not on the surface. So we want to do transparency. Then you get to the fun bit about the continuous integration, and trying to write that word is exceedingly difficult. So this process then looks something like this. You have my beloved Trello board. You have the Poe editor for translation and localization. Code is pushed by our beloved developers to GitHub. If the strings file is updated, it sends a little webhook ping to PoEditor and telling them there are new strings for you to translate. It gets those terms and then alerting our contributors to saying you have new strings that haven't been localized. They then go in and do the editing of those strings. When they like, those strings and translations are then put back into GitHub because we update the strings files for all those countries that have been updated. And that kicks off, or even just pushing the code to GitHub, kicks off a build. So we're using Bitrise to do automated testing. And we then check for, do we do all the things that we need, and will this actually work, and how, checking that all the bits and bobs are in place. And Bitrise then, because we want to be able to communicate in reducing friction, we want to communicate in a good way with our client. So we need to make sure that when we're discussing an iPad or an iOS app or an app in general, that we are talking about the same version of that app. So Bitrise tags our build and saying, this is build 285, which means that when we talk to our clients, we can say, but which build are you on? And they say, 279. And we say, you're lagging behind, my dear friend. But that, in order to check what was done in that commit, we send that build ID and that build tag back to GitHub. So we can look into GitHub and we can check out which tag it is, see what code was changed in that release, and we know what might have caused the problem, or we can easily find it out. And this makes sure that we are talking about the same thing. We're not talking about some outdated bug that is fixed a week ago. When Bitrise is done, it pushes the build to Hockey and tells our users that, yay, you can now download an updated version. And we don't have to be involved in any way. This just flows naturally through. We're not using App Store here, which saves us a bit of trouble. So you have an enterprise certificate, which handles the signing process. And then we get an alert into Slack, where our client is also present. We have a Slack channel where they are. And what this gives us is the opportunity to discuss things in a more tangible way. You're not talking about a product requirement on an abstract level. You're talking about, or if you mention the word coffee cup, for instance, each and every one of us have a slightly different definition of it, and should it be this thick or that thick, what height and whatnot. And that's the kind of discussions you get into when it's abstract. But once you can actually see that, and in this analogy, the iPad app, once you can see it and you can touch it, you can find out that, what we're talking about is all these different variations. Let's find out which one we should actually build. What type of requirement do we actually need? And if we started out with the paper cup, and we find out that, that's not as durable as we would like, let's make it in porcelain instead. We can do that, but at least we start out somewhere, and we can discuss going forward from the coffee paper cup to the porcelain one in a more constructive way. We are talking about the same thing, because our technical understanding runs a bit deeper than that of our clients. We talk about the inner workings of the app and about view controls here and modules there and unit tests here. And they do not. They talk about the value that they can create for their end users. And so you have, in order to create the transparency, in order to talk about the same stuff, we get crash reports into our Slack channel. So there's the client, Henning. And he's saying, what's this then? Why is it crashing? And we say, we don't know, but let's find out. And we can talk about the same stuff. We can talk about it in a good and constructive way, because they are aware of this might be an issue and that might be an issue. There is no, or I won't say there's no, but there's a minimum of emails being sent back and forth. Emails will almost always generate fuss and misunderstandings. Especially when you get a wall of text back. You will miss out on something. So they can keep track on what we're doing, and we can talk to them and saying, how are we doing now? What should we do? Is this the right priority? So continuous integration and then the deployment of it reduces that friction, and I would urge you all very much to start using it with your clients. Push that app, even if it's not done, but just push it onto the phone of your client, push it out to the end users, and see what happens, and then have a common understanding of what's going haywire when it does. Thank you very much. That might be my colleagues.